Alright guys, today I'm going to start the Zach's Lie by Roland Smith. To get you going, you should read the back of the book, and you should read something about the Witness Protection Program. And the Witness Protection Program, it's from the U.S. Marshals, and it's designed to protect threatened witnesses before, during, and after a trial. So yes, it's a real program, and his family has been forced to join the Witness Security Program. So read the back. We'll do some more research on this, and this will help you understand the first chapter. This is my first time reading this, so I'll be learning all of this with you, so there will be zero spoilers. See my shirt? It's Boca. Yeah, you can't beat Boca because they're not supposed to lose. But that's in Argentina. It's a different story. All right. Page 3, Friday, August 25th. Commander If is in my shirt pocket. We're sitting on an airplane in the last row. 5 people. My sister, my mother, Aunt Doris, and Uncle Don. We got on the airplane before the other passengers. Too risky to board through the gate, Uncle Don had explained. Airport security led us through the cargo area underneath the airport. This must have all been prearranged, because no one blinked an eye as we wove our way through the maze of baggage conveyor belts. When we got on board, the flight attendants looked at us with curiosity, but they didn't ask us why we rated this kind of treatment. I guess they knew better. We'll be boarding the other passengers in a few minutes, one of the attendants said, and showed us to our seats. Aunt Doris and Uncle Don took the aisle seats. Mom sat next to my sister on Aunt Doris's side. I took the window seat on Uncle Don's side. And Mom has a book to read. My sister has a pile of movie magazines, and I have my journal and my pencil. Boom. Aunt Doris and Uncle Don do not have anything to read. They are working. Aunt Doris has her head turned and is watching the flight attendants behind us put away cans of pop and juice. And Uncle Don stares straight ahead. Here they come, Uncle Don says, and the other passengers start making their way down the aisle, finding their seats, stuffing bags into the overhead compartments, and the 5 of us stare at the passengers' faces, wondering if any of them know. Well, Commander If had come to Jack Osborne when he was 9 years old, just after his Caped Crusader days. Jack wasn't proud of this, but on windy nights he used to slip into his sister's red leotard's safety pin a sheet around his neck, lean out of his bedroom window with his arms stretched, and pretend to fly like the superheroes he watched on television. This had come to an end the night he leaned out a little too far and discovered that he could not fly, falling through his father's grape arbor and snapping the thick gnarled vines that were said to have come from cuttings grown by President Thomas Jefferson at Monticello in 1804. Hearing the crash, Jack's father, Neil Osborne, ran outside in his boxer shorts and beamed the flashlight on his crumpled son, who was covered in red scratches and purple grape juice. He then shone the light up through the gaping hole in the arbor, took a deep breath, and slowly let it out through flared nostrils. It's probably what saved his life. Jack's mother, Patricia Osborne, called down from the bedroom window, "Is everything okay?" Mr. Osborne looked up and said, "It's just another one of those darn Caped Crusaders. He must have stalled in the storm." "Do I need to call 911?" Mr. Osborne looked down at his only son. Jack had been to the hospital so many times for stitches and broken bones that his father had considered buying him a permanent room there. "Is anything broken, Jacko?" "I think my leg," Jack said through gritted teeth. Mr. Osborne bent down with the flashlight and looked at Jack's leg. "They're going to get a big kick out of these red leotards in the emergency room." As it turned out, both legs were broken, and Jack spent the next 6 weeks wired to a hospital bed with enough screws and pins in his leg to set off metal detectors for the rest of his life. The third day that Jack was in the hospital, his father brought him a wooden model of the space shuttle, which he had carved in his woodworking shop. Mr. Osborne was always doing something with his hands: building, carving, sketching, fixing, driving, writing, flying. Jack's earliest memories were of his father's busy and clever hands. The next day, as Jack was practicing space shuttle landing on his cast in the hospital bed, he discovered that the cockpit opened and inside was a tiny astronaut. He named the astronaut Commander Jacko at first. Commander Jacko had been a Navy fighter pilot, as Jack's father had been before he married Jack's mother. He looked a lot like Jack's father when he was young, although at 2 inches tall, Commander Jacko was quite a bit shorter than Neil Osborne. Jack changed the astronaut's name the day his father caught Jack talking to him in the hospital room. His father heard Jack jabbering away from down the hallway, and he came into Jack's room expecting to see his wife or a nurse, but Jack was alone. He was lying on the bed with both legs in casts, an IV tube attached to his arm, and the space shuttle with the tiny astronaut resting on his chest. "Who are you talking to, Jacko?" Jack stared at his father as if he didn't understand, but he knew perfectly well what his father was asking. Mr. Osborne sat down on the bed and picked up the space shuttle. "I sure wanted to fly one of these babies." Jack knew this. Everyone knew this. His father had come very close to becoming a shuttle pilot. Jack wasn't sure what had gotten in his way, but it had something to do with some trouble that he had gotten into when he was a combat pilot during the Gulf War. "You know," his father said, "when I was your age, I had an imaginary friend too." Jack still didn't let on that he knew what his father was talking about. "Yep," his father continued, "my friend was a scuba diver, and I spent hours chatting away with him. One day your grandfather caught me. He told me he used to have a friend too when he was a boy, and his friend's name was Mr. If." "Funny name," Jack commented. "Well, it stood for imaginary friend. If. Do you know what your grandfather told me?" Jack shook his head. "He said I should enjoy my imaginary friend for as long as I could, because one day Mr. If was going to leave and I would never have another friend like him. My imaginary friend left when we were vacationing at the beach. I was building sandcastles and Mr. If said he had a secret mission, and he walked into the surf wearing his scuba gear, and I never saw him again." And Jack's imaginary friend took off for Mars when Jack was 11 years old, and he didn't see him for 2 years. Commander If returned the morning Jack was packing his things to be moved to their new home. The Osbornes couldn't take everything with them because the house they were moving into was smaller than the house they were moving out of. Considerably smaller. Uncle Don had warned them. The Osbornes had to choose what they would take, which wasn't a big deal for Jack because most of the things he cared about were small. This was not the case for his mother and sister. They were attached to big things, many of which had to be left behind. Jack was sorting through his stuff, deciding what he would take with him, and found the space shuttle in the bottom of a box in his closet. The shuttle looked like it had been back to Mars and back, and Jack flew the shuttle from the closet, made a perfect landing on his bed, and Commander If stepped out of the cockpit again. "You got back just in time," Jack told him. "We're moving." "I know," Commander If said. Jack put Commander If in his shirt pocket. With his caped crusader days behind him, Jack had to find something to fill the void. Before he left the hospital, he discovered 2 things. The first was books. His mother brought him stacks of them. Treasure Island, Tarzan, Sherlock Holmes. He began to read like he had never read before, and he continued to do so after he got out of the hospital. The second thing Jack had discovered was journal writing. While Jack read, his father would sometimes sit beside his bed, writing and sketching in a beautiful journal he had picked up during one of his trips. "What are you writing?" Jack asked him one night. "Just some thoughts." "How's the book?" "Good." Jack paused. "I wouldn't mind having a journal like that for my thoughts." "I think that could be arranged," his father said. And a week later, his father gave him 5 blank journals. Jack had managed to fill up 1 journal every year since his accident. And as he sat in the airplane with the 5th journal in his lap, he wondered where he was going to get a new journal when this one was filled. "Our flying time to Salt Lake City will be 2 hours and 50 minutes, the pilot announced over the intercom. This was the first hint Jack had heard about where they were going. His mother knew, Uncle Don and Aunt Doris knew, but Jack and his sister did not know, or so she swore to him, but Jack suspected his mother had told her. "Will that be our final destination?" Jack asked Uncle Don. "No, we're catching a connecting flight in Salt Lake." "Just relax, Zach," Uncle Don said. Well, that was a question. In Salt Lake. Zach. Jack was still not used to hearing that name directed toward him. They had chosen the name Zach because it sounded like Jack. "In case you slip up," Uncle Don had told him. "You can claim you said Zach, not Jack," and his sister had gotten to pick her own name. She had chosen the name Wanda, which did not sound anything like her real name, Joanne. Jack complained that it wasn't fair that she got to pick her name and he didn't. "Wanda is older than you, Zach," Aunt Doris explained, "and she is less likely to slip up." So this whole idea about changing your name is because of the witness security program. His mother, who had renamed herself Mary, sided with Aunt Doris, pointing out that Jack hadn't picked out the name Jack either. "Your father named you," she said. "If anyone slips up, it'll be Wanda and not me," Jack had said, defending himself. Well, actually, he didn't mind being called Zach, but he would have felt better about it if he had chosen the name himself. The airplane pushed back from the terminal and began taxiing toward the runway. But the last time Zach had flown, he sat up in the jump seat behind his father in the cockpit. Not today, Jack thought. Not ever again. So right here we have the idea that the father's gone or he's missing. The Osborns were the Grangers now, and Zach Granger looked in his shirt pocket. Commander If was nodding in agreement. As the airplane took off, Zach began to read through the brief journal entries of the past month. There were only 2. Okay, and obviously that is going to take us into the second chapter. So far, I like the book. It's interesting. A lot of suspense, a lot of imagination. It's good. See you guys for chapter 2.